I'd like to introduce Elena. Elena Zidaru is one of our registered dietitians at Community Health Resource Center. She has a wide-ranging area of expertise when it comes to nutrition. Elena, take it away.
Yes. Hello, everyone, and thank you for participating in our program today. I won't spend more time on introductions because we have information to get over, and I know you're going to have quite a bit of questions too. So taking care of the gut, I want to say that we're going to briefly go through the gut and its structure and functional components. We're going to define the gut microbiota, those bacteria that live in our gut, talk about a little bit of how the gut influences brain function through the gut-brain axis, outline some factors that can shape the composition of the gut microbiota and what happens when that balance it gets change, and basically you create dysbiosis in your gut. And also we're going to touch upon probiotics, prebiotics, and fermented foods, because I think a lot of people would have more questions about those. So all disease begins in the gut, and even this was said a long time ago. You know, we know for sure nowadays that overall physical and mental health are directly influenced by the health of our gut. We have three complex it's a complex interplay here between gut physiology, gut microbiota, and environment. And we're going to go over each of them. So what is the gut and what does it do? So gut physiology wise, we know that the GI tract, what we say gastrointestinal tract, will have different organs. So it's basically, we have the GI tract organs and the accessory organs, which are not part of like where the food goes, but those can actually help with the digestion, support the digestion of food. So basically the GI tract from A to Z, what I call from mouth to anus, mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and anus. So that's where the food travels. And then we have those accessory organs, liver, gallbladder, pancreas, by secretion of bile salts or digestive enzymes. They support the digestion and the gut. So the role of the gut, it's pretty complex overall, as we all know. So it's definitely about nourishing the body, you know, creating that fuel that our cells could use through digestion, absorption, and transportation of the fuel, elimination of waste, that's part of our large intestine, and then the protection too, because about 70% of our immune system is actually in the gut. And then the intestinal wall also prevents kind of the flow of foreign substances into the bloodstream. So this is kind of a way of, you know, when we eat something, if our body and the immune system in our gut takes care of that, it's not going to get absorbed into the blood to make us sick, you know. So it's like, if you can think of this GI tract as almost like a separate part of our body, because through the GI tract, then we absorb things in our blood, but it kind of acts as a barrier and a filter for what actually gets into our blood or not. The stability of the various gut functions actually rely on this partnership or relationship with microorganisms that live in the gut, what we call the microbiota. And that leads us to the second kind of part of that complex interplay, the gut microbiota, what it is and what does it do. So the gut microbiota is part of the human microbiome. So as humans, we are actually, we have a lot of bacteria on us and in us. So the microbiome refers more to, this is the proper definition, this ecological community of commensal, symbiotic, and pathogenic microorganisms that literally share our body space. And again, that will include bacteria on your skin, of course, bacteria, let's say in your mouth, and then the human microbiome refers mainly to the bacteria in the GI tract. So microbiome versus microbiota. But the whole idea is that the microbes are essential for human health. And how do they coexist with our body? So we have three types of bacteria: the neutral one or commensal, symbiotic, which are the ones actually what I like to call the good guys, the ones that actually enhance and help our health. And then we have the pathogenic, the bad guys, that when we grow too many of those in our body, that's when we can become sick. But basically at any given time, we have a combination of all those three. And then also we have the microbes can be resident or permanent, or can be transient or temporary in our body. So as I mentioned, I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but we're supposed to have bacteria from mouth to large intestine. Most of this microbiota is in the colon, actually, the majority of, but we have some bacteria in our mouth, in our stomach, in our small intestine, and they're very specific for the part of the body where they should colonize. But the majority of it, again, would be in our colon. The gut microbiota, as I said, we have a bacteria all over in our body, including on our skin, but the gut microbiota contains the largest population of microbes in the body, and about 70% of them will reside in the colon. As I mentioned, large intestine contains the most. We have over 100 trillion microbes. So basically we're outnumbered. Our cells are outnumbered by the microbes. So we have more microbes than human cells. And then when you think about that, you think that they might play a big role in our health, right? Why would we have so many? And this is just more kind of interesting. I always find this fact pretty, in a way, scary, right? That we have about 2 to 6 pounds of microbes in our body, quite a bit. Then the four more important roles are basically to maintain the integrity of the intestinal wall, to improve metabolic health, improve immunity, and also gut-brain axis, which is kind of a way they communicate, those microbes that we have in our gut, they communicate with our brain. And there's more research kind of showing can affect the mood, anxiety, depression, and all those mental health issues. So with the first one, maintain the integrity of the intestinal wall. So what happens is that they can strengthen the wall of the GI tract. And, we have those cells, the tight junction cells in our small intestine where most of the absorption of nutrients happen. So then those are basically cells that are not completely sealed, but are not too loose. So they're kind of permeable to some extent. So then the nutrients that are digested can be easily absorbed from that small intestine into our bloodstream. And then again, if the integrity of this intestinal cell is affected, if let's say the cells are too permeable, people can, certain things can leak in our blood and be recognized as foreign materials by our immune system, and that's not good overall. So we need a certain degree of permeability. We can't have them too tight because then we can absorb the nutrients. We cannot have them too loose to leak. So we need that proper integrity of the wall. Also, the gut bacteria can eliminate old cells and replenish with new ones. And this is how they also keep the balance of this intestinal wall. How they improve the metabolic health? Well, first of all, through the digestion, a lot of high fiber foods, and also a lot of prebiotic foods that we're going to talk about later. They basically, when they end up in your gut, because fiber is something we don't digest, and then it ends up in our colon undigested, it gets fermented by the gut bacteria, and then that will form those short chain fatty acids, which they are beneficial to colon health and digestive health. So those are, as I said, important things. They can reduce the pH in the gut. They can inhibit the growth of pathogenic bacteria. They can actually, those short chain fatty acids can improve bone mineralization. And they also been studied and linked with effects on weight loss and glycemic control. So definitely we want to, through the fermentation of fiber, to create those short chain fatty acids because they can actually impact positively our metabolic health. Also, the synthesis of B vitamins and K vitamins happen through the gut bacteria. Absorption of calcium and iron can be regulated and improved by that, and then also regulates the production of hormones, cytokines, neurotransmitters. So this is, and it's important because they can also deactivate and excrete some toxins and chemicals and drugs in our body. So all those roles can actually affect our metabolic health. With immunity, how they improve immunity, they kind of help maintaining a healthy immune system, kind of what I'm saying here, teach the immune cells what is good and what is bad. So then our immune system works or functions properly. It controls inflammation through the regulation of those cytokines, and can produce some antimicrobial substances. With the gut-brain axis, this was the fourth kind of role of those microbes. As I mentioned earlier, microbes talk to the brain, and they send those chemical signals from the enteric nervous system to the central nervous system through the vagus nerve. And the signaling, it looks like, it's not very well understood, obviously, but it looks like the signaling may influence the memory, mood, cognition, behaviors, the reactivity to stress. And those are kind of all important things, and to kind of learn with research, because we still don't have a very clear understanding of how this happens, but definitely this relationship has been established. Now, how does the environment influence the gut? And this is something that's kind of our third part of the presentation. Well, it's been known that in the first 3 years of life, because when we're born, our gut is sterile, and in the first 3 years of our life, our gut starts being colonized by, different bacteria. And by age 3, basically, you have a gut bacteria that's gonna kind of follow you through the rest of your life. So the composition will remain relatively stable throughout lifetime. Again, some changes can happen, but would not change completely, So you kind of develop that fingerprint of your gut microbiome by age 3. And every person in this world has their own fingerprint of gut bacteria. So it's very unique and specific to that particular individual. At this point, we don't have a standard healthy gut microbiome, let's say a map of saying, this is what a healthy microbiome looks like, and this is the ratio of different bacteria that we should have. There's no such a thing. And that kind of, in a way, makes it a little bit harder when it comes to recommendations for probiotics. Definitely, we know early environmental influences can be, how you were born, if you were vaginal delivery versus C-section, if you had a lot of infection or you needed a lot of antibiotics as a child, feeding patterns, breast milk versus formula, the first foods that you introduce as a baby, and then where you live, and what you're exposed to definitely will influence that development in the first years of life. And we have here a list with other environmental influences like diet, living environment, as I mentioned, physical activity, illness, infections, antibiotics versus medication, stress, and then exposure to chemicals and toxins. As I mentioned, the ideal composition of gut microbiota has not been classified, but we know 2 important things. For a healthy gut microbiome, we need to have a balance of good and bad bacteria, as I mentioned. And then it's been shown with different research that 85% should be neutral and good guys, and then just 15% the pathogenic, the bad guys. So definitely the vast majority should be in that neutral versus beneficial. Then also we know that a more diverse gut microbiome, I mean, that means that the gut microbiome will include a good diversity of different bacteria, bacterial species. That would be a healthy one. So the more diverse, and also the ratio of good versus bad. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what happens if environmental factors push that balance of the gut and you have more bad than good ones. So that's a term that we have dysbiosis, which basically that's when that balance is shifted. That's basically a decrease in good bacteria that allows bad bacteria to flourish and take over. And, you know, in terms of, on the left side, you have more an example of the pathogenic bad bacteria that can take over. And then here on the right side, we have the main three: Bifidobacteria and Lactobacillus, Saccharomyces boulardii, which this is actually yeast. The Bifidobacteria and the Lactobacillus are the main kind of good guys that we're gonna see on a lot of products that are either labeled as food probiotics or probiotic supplement. Causes for dysbiosis, there are many that were linked, you know, from antibiotics use, proton pump inhibitors, especially kind of long-term use of that. And it's been more a shift right now for those to be prescribed on a short kind of term basis, and then, you know, with breaks in between. But back in the days, a lot of people were on those for a long time. Also the NSAIDs, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen, so long-term use of that. Hormones, including birth control pills, steroids, chemotherapy, infections, artificial sweeteners, especially when, you know, consume in excessively and on a regular basis, excessive sugar and fat in the diet, insufficient fiber in your diet, alcohol, and stress. So those were linked as causes for dysbiosis. And this is an impact on, like, when you have that dysbiosis, how does it translate in your gut physiology and what happens in your body? And again, there are a lot of things from autoimmunity here at the bottom to localized gut inflammation or systemic inflammation, which would be more like inflammation at a general level, like throughout your body, not just in your gut. Increased oxidative stress, which is an issue because we have all this. So through oxidation, we create free radicals, which are kind of unstable chemical molecules that would can damage DNA, can you know, obviously create health issues. So a lot of times, probably you heard about antioxidants that are good, because usually an antioxidant will provide a molecule that would stabilize that free radical to not allow it to kind of roam in your body and damage DNA in the cells. So antioxidants are kind of good to combat this oxidative stress that can harm us. But again, with dysbiosis, you can increase oxidative stress. You can affect the intestinal permeability that will affect, obviously, your absorption of nutrients, chronic infections, impaired energy metabolism, impaired nutrient synthesis, like vitamins and minerals and short chain fatty acids that we said, you know, a healthy gut will facilitate. Of course, everything right now, it's basically impaired. Symptoms, usually a lot of people may have some GI symptoms like abdominal pain, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, food cravings, weight gain, and in some cases. And then those are also some associated diseases and conditions with the gut dysbiosis. And we have everything from IBS to allergies and sensitivities to foods and drugs. You know, inflammatory bowel disease can be small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, yeast overgrowth. So all those conditions are associated with gut dysbiosis. And now the big question is, can we change our gut microbiota for better health? You know, what can we do? Because a lot of times, like, well, we need to take an antibiotic, we need to take a proton pump inhibitor, we need to take some certain drugs or hormones, or we're exposed to different things in our environment that, and we have a lot of stress in our life. And then how can we, you know, how can we work with our diet to counterbalance the effect on our gut balance? So we have 3 strategies here: diet, probiotic, prebiotic, and fecal transplant. This is, I really have just one slide, and it's used in just kind of very specific situations. But I wanted to mention, because this is actually a way to change, you know, the microbiota. But I think for most of us, diet and probiotic and prebiotic would be, you know, kind of the way to go. So we all know Western diet, what it's composed of: high fat, low fiber, high calorie, kind of calorie dense foods, high in saturated fat and sugar. And then we have a Mediterranean diet, which is more plant-based with high fiber foods, lower fat. I mean, not necessarily low fat, but I would say with more healthy fats than saturated fats, which are more animal type of fats. Healthy fats like fish and avocado and nuts and olive oil. Also, it's rich, as I said, in vegetable, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds, which those would be your main plant foods that are naturally having fiber in them. And then we know that it improves diversity of gut microbiota, this type of diet. So this diet, besides the fact that it's more anti-inflammatory, will actually provide the fiber and the prebiotics that the gut, the good guys, right? The healthy microbes in our gut will thrive on. With probiotics as a term, so probiotics are probiotics are defined as live microorganisms that, when administered in adequate amounts, they confer a health benefit on the host. So for something to be labeled as a probiotic, you really have to, again, you have to have a proven health benefit. And also, you need to consume that product in an adequate amount to kind of confer that health benefit. And I'll explain more when I'm talking about fermented foods, why that's important. A probiotic is defined by its genus, like, for example, Lactobacillus, that's the genus. And then species, for example, Rhamnosus. Sometimes it's Acidophilus. So Lactobacillus can be different species of Lactobacillus, a lot of them. And then also the strain designation, which is very important. So probiotics will have 3 kind of important components: the genus, the species, and the strain designation. The strain designation, it's usually a random number with letters at the end. So in this case, HN001. So it's very important because there might be another Lactobacillus rhamnosus that is not HN001. It's a different strain that will actually affect your health in a different way. So they're very specific to the strain designation. Probiotics are strain specific, as I mentioned, and then they come in different forms. They can be foods or medical foods or dietary supplement, can be infant formulas, pharmaceuticals. And then again, there are not that many foods that can be labeled as probiotics, and just because of the specific definition. The most common probiotics are Lactobacillus, Bifidobacterium, and Saccharomyces, as I mentioned, which is an yeast. And the least common probiotics are E. coli, Bacillus, Enterococcus, Faecium, and Streptococcus thermophilus. And those are just not as common. In order to be effective, they need to be alive, non-pathogenic. Again, they need to have some health benefits to not be harmful. They need to have the right strain to be delivered in adequate amounts. They need to be resistant to processing, storage, delivery. Even they need to survive our pH acid in the stomach. So they need to basically get in a live form in our colon where they should be. And a lot of times there are lots of barriers with that. And they need to remain viable at the intestine level and hopefully to adhere to the intestinal epithelium. You know, you'll see some information. We know more about kind of I don't know, a decade ago or so, we're hoping that those probiotics can colonize our gut. And then in this way, you could change your gut microbiota basically by taking them. But it's been shown that, you know, they can grow, they can metabolize, they can interact with our resident microbes, but they rarely actually colonize in our gut. So they can still offer a lot of health benefits just by being then when you take them, let's say with a food or a supplement, but they're not necessarily, you're not going to have them colonize. And at one point without taking that probiotic, you're going to just have that kind of bacteria flourishing. So that's been shown that's not happening actually. When purchasing a probiotic or a food, with probiotic benefits, you want to make sure that it's still alive. So you look for labels that will guarantee live bacteria through the end of the shelf life as opposed to at the time of manufacture, because that means, you know, through the end of shelf life, that kind of guarantees you that the probiotic is actually alive when you take it, as opposed to at the time of manufacture. Right now that I'm making it, it's alive, but I can't guarantee that tomorrow will still be alive. As we know, like any other over-the-counter supplements, probiotics are not FDA regulated. They don't have very strict kind of body organization to oversee the quality of those products. And that's why you have to kind of look at labels. So having this through the end of shelf life, it's an indicator that's a good probiotic. The strain, again, I won't buy any probiotic supplement that will not give me the strain. They would just say, let's say Lactobacillus acidophilus. I need that third part of the information. And that's another kind of way to make sure that's a kind of reliable company with a good quality product. Amount, again, you want to make sure the amount, it says it contains the amount that was associated with the specific health benefit. A lot of research studies that will tell you, you know, let's say between 5 to 10 billion colony forming units or CFUs, it's been shown to help with this condition. You want to make sure you're taking that amount as opposed to taking something that's less. A lot of them are in that 1 billion to 10 billion kind of range to show, you know, adequate amounts to make a difference. But a lot of times it can be that with research, it shows that you need more. So whatever claim for a health benefit is, try to look for that research and make sure that those is appropriate. Storage, you know, you want to make sure that the manufacturer is going to tell you if you refrigerate it or not, and then make sure you store it the way it was actually stated on the label. And also the contact info. A lot of them may not have, and that's a little bit, you want to make sure they have a contact info that people could actually ask questions about the product. With the probiotic foods, again, certain yogurts, kefir, and other cultured dairy products, they are in the category of probiotic foods, but not all of them. Not all the bacteria present that's part of the fermented milk products will have a probiotic effect. And that would be because, again, they might not be in the dosage that they need to be. So per serving, they might not provide enough amount of that bacteria. They might not be very specific with the strain. So a lot of times those claims or saying that the probiotics in the yogurt, I would say they're just live bacteria. It's a fermented product, and I'll leave it this way. So this is kind of the last part, is that unless plain, they generally contain added sugar, and that's kind of a downfall of those, yogurts, kefir products that are actually flavored and with a lot of added sugar. With the fermented foods, I wanted to say that in the fermented foods, a lot of foods are part of that, right? With the probiotics, as I said, just certain foods, they have that, and certain brands can actually say this is a probiotic food, but fermented foods are a lot. The yogurt, the kefir, kimchi, and miso, and sauerkraut, and cheese, a lot of cheeses. Those are fermented foods, and they're made with live microorganisms. A lot of those that are kind of refrigerated, you know that basically when you eat them, you're gonna get some live bacteria. So through the fermentation process, you have this live microbes. And with the products that are fermented and refrigerated, a lot of times, you get the live microbes into your body. Again, if they have a probiotic effect or not, it's hard to know, because depending on the strain and the amount that you're ingesting. But as you will see, fermented foods, actually, they have quite a bit of benefits, regardless if they're in the probiotic category or not. So they're definitely worth eating. So they should be labeled as live and active culture. And as I mentioned, they're still beneficial even not containing live cultures, or if they containing live cultures, they're still beneficial because they can increase concentrations of vitamins and bioactive compounds. They can actually make certain chemical compounds in that food more bioavailable to our body. So it's still worth to definitely eat the fermented foods, regardless if the bacteria will still be live or not. And I want to say that certain things like, for example, sourdough bread, it's a common one that I talk with my patients about. I mean, that's a fermented food, but definitely won't have any live bacteria when you eat it, because through the baking process, you kill those microbes. But as I said, the fermentation process that happens prior to baking will actually offer some health benefits, but you're not going to get any live bacteria the way you would get, let's say, if you drink a glass of kefir. With prebiotics, those are, they're basically the food of the good bacteria in the gut. So a lot of good bacteria will feed on those prebiotics, which are types of fibers like inulin, fructooligosaccharides or FOS, and galactooligosaccharides, GOS. Those are the most popular, the most common, those three. And they occur naturally in food, or they can be used, synthesized from food and used in supplements to kind of, can be added to other foods. And say this is a prebiotic food because I added this FOS or GOS or inulin to it. They can increase fecal bifidobacterium and increase satiety and decrease desire to consume sweet and salty foods. This is kind of some new research showing that, those prebiotics can help our gut through this. And it's unclear how much of prebiotics we need in a day. We know for fiber, not all the fiber is prebiotic, but So there's a distinction, we all know that for a high fiber diet, a woman should consume at least 25 grams of fiber a day. And for men, somewhere around 30 or more. But in terms of prebiotics per se, we don't know, we don't have a clear recommendation, but their studies suggested that more than 3 grams a day, it's kind of what needed. Some saying just 5 or even more. So it depends on the conditions and what you're trying to achieve. But usually the prebiotics, as I said, 3 grams or more a day would be kind of a recommendation. And those are the main prebiotic foods, the foods that will have those fermentable type of fibers that the good bacteria, mainly Bifidobacterium, will feed on. Berries, flax seeds, bananas, beans, legumes, leek, onions, garlic. So anything in the onion kind of family, asparagus, artichokes, chicory, root, whole grains like whole wheat, barley, oats, and the raw dandelion greens. So those are the kind of highest sources of those prebiotic foods. And with the fecal transplant, I just want to say there definitely, so what happened is that it's exactly what it is, fecal transplant. So you kind of transfer the feces of a healthy individual to an individual that's sick. For example, with C. diff, it's been used very successful when people get this bad form of C. diff infection, that diarrhea is kind of uncontrollable, and you have somebody more immune compromised because of that, and they can really establish, they get those recurrent C. diff infections. It's been worked pretty well to basically transfer the feces from a healthy individual to this sick person to really create this, or help with that person microbiome to, to clear the infection and improve the health of the ill person. So there are some cases for Crohn's disease that's been used, but mainly for C. diff, bad forms of C. diff, when people can really recover on their own. And future trends in terms of what the research kind of is going, kind of understand more how we could use the gut microbiota and probiotics to help with autism, depression, Parkinson's, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer. So more to kind of learn. We're not there yet to really have more information about that, but hopefully with more research, we'll find more interesting things. So this is an online resource that you're gonna have, US Probiotic Guide. That's a very good one. I use it all the time in my practice because they have an app too that you could download on your phone. It's free to use. They have a website, and you could actually check the by conditions. They give you some recommendations for probiotics, and they give you the brand name and the type of bacteria, which is nice because a lot of times in research studies, they give you just the type of the bacteria strain, but it's like, how do you find that product on the market? Because you don't know what brand will actually give you that exact combination that was shown in research to be helpful for that condition. So this guide will give you the brand, will give you the particular bacteria that's in it, the particular dosage, and they'll give you the level of evidence, from level 1, which is the highest level of evidence that can help with that condition. For example, IBS, you look at what's at level 1, and then you look at what probiotics can help with that. And then, of course, you have level 2 and level 3. So some, have good evidence, some they have less good. But overall, it's a nice guide as a starting point for people that want to take a probiotic to improve their gut health. And we'll definitely want to open to questions.
I figured we could get started with the questions that were originally entered through registration.
Somebody asked here, is it necessary to eat probiotic food or beverage on a regular basis? How often is necessary? I bought some cleansing juice. So again, the research points more recently, and I want to kind of also let you know that the information on gut microbiota and probiotics will change all the time because we're learning so much more. It's one of the, it's one of the hardest type topics, and a lot of research it's being conducted on those probiotics and gut microbiome. So we're going to learn much more. It's something that maybe from year to year we learn more. So it looks like a healthy individual that it's just healthy. They don't have any GI issues. They don't have any reason to believe they have dysbiosis in their gut. Actually, taking probiotics is not going to do much to their health. There's not going to keep their gut healthier, not going to improve their health. So it's not needed. Of course, you could eat fermented foods. As I mentioned, fermented foods are different than probiotics because they might not have enough dosage of those microbes. Again, sometimes they might not be alive, but they still offer some health benefits for your gut. I would say definitely eating fermented foods on a regular basis, it's fine, but taking a probiotic supplement, if you're healthy and you don't have any GI issues, it's not recommended. How long does it take to clean your gut? Which I'm not sure exactly how to answer this question because I'm not sure. I mean, if whoever asked that maybe can clarify to clean the gut. I mean, maybe if you refer to, let's say, if you have some imbalance in your gut, and how long does it take you to establish that balance again? I don't think it's clear, and also will depend from individual to individual. So for example, there are studies that show that, let's say, after an antibiotic course, about a third of your gut bacteria can get wiped out. And then, of course, your body after that will start to heal and build up those microbes because, they multiply pretty fast. But they say it can take from a month to a year, depending who you are and your state of health and how fast your body can build that back, the microbiome again. So again, if this question refers to that, if I didn't answer your question, maybe you can clarify the question of the.
Elena?
Yes.
Yes, there is a participant who's raising their hand, and I'm going to unmute them. Patricia, okay. I will be unmuting you now.
Yeah, my doctor was saying that fecal transplant doesn't work for IBS problems.
Yeah, probably. I mean, probably he's right because, as I said, so far it's been used just definitely with C. diff infections, definitely. So I would say probably your doctor is right. We don't have any evidence, and it hasn't been used for IBS. It's been used only for C. diff, really bad cases of C. diff infection, and also in some, again, more serious cases of Crohn's disease, which is an inflammatory bowel disease. But I haven't heard of using it with IBS.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your question. All right, we can get back to the Q&A here.
Yeah, so I'll move on to the next question. How do you know how much of the probiotic gets to the gut? And it's true, you don't know. I mean, again, if the label is ensuring that the microbes are alive by the end of shelf life, it's a good kind of, again, it's a good chance that they're all alive or most of them alive when you take it. Again, if the probiotic is made in a way to survive the acid in your stomach, because a lot of them are enteric coated or, made in a way that would survive the acid in your stomach, it's a good guess to say, well, the majority will make it, but it's hard to know exactly how much gets in your gut. Of course, the storage can influence that, the way, if you order online and needs refrigeration, did it come with an ice pack, or buy it in the store from the refrigeration area. If it says that needs to be refrigerated and you keep it refrigerated, again, all those measures actually will ensure that most of them will be alive when you take them, but it's kind of hard to know for sure. And then, do kombucha or aqua kefir improve gut microbiota, or is it just a fad gimmick? Again, improved gut microbiota, as I said, those are usually fermented foods, and all those two actually are the ones that likely will have live bacteria in them, you know, because they're refrigerated. A lot of times the bottles of kefir, if you use kefir, you know, and you keep it in the fridge, a lot of time the bottle, it's kind of this soft plastic that will extend and will be swollen, and when you open it will have a fizz. The same with kombucha, you know, so that's actually a good sign. That means, oh, those bacteria are alive. Again, they can improve our body's health, but you can really use a kombucha as a probiotic. Let's say somebody said, oh, in this study, they show this particular bacteria strain will help you with IBS. And then let's say you look and you buy kombucha and again, may have that bacteria genus and species, but not that particular strain. And your kombucha is not even telling you how much is in that bottle. So taking it definitely can help you, but may not actually create the effects kind of proven by that study on IBS, just because may not be enough, may not be the right strain. You know, I'm not saying that they're not good for you at all, but you know, it's something kind of hard to say how much it will help you. And again, if you are healthy, improving the gut health may not, I mean, you know, may not do much to you, but I think those fermented foods, again, are still important to keep as part of your healthy diet.
I think that we can make it with 6 minutes left and 3 questions.
Exactly. If generally no health issues, are colonoscopy outcomes improved by regime of probiotics? I'm not sure if I understand, I mean, how to read this question. This says that, what do you mean by colonoscopy outcomes? I mean, you mean like, if you use probiotics, maybe we'll, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what do you mean by colonoscopy outcomes to be improved by the probiotics. So we'll skip, and then if you can clarify, that would be actually helpful. How do you improve nutrient absorption in the gut? I've been told that I have bad absorption, and I'm not sure if digestive enzymes are enough. Yeah, that's a good question. Overall, it will depend on what kind of digestive enzymes you're taking. I mean, it's like, I think this question would be helpful to be answered more on an individual basis, kind of knowing your background. You know, some people have, let's say, pancreatic insufficiency. Their pancreas does not make enough, does not put out enough enzymes to digest the food. And in this case, you know, you'll have to take some enzymes with your meals to kind of help with the absorption. If you feel like, well, my digestion is a little bit sluggish and I might not absorb enough. The question is, how do you know you're not absorbing enough? Do you have any mineral or vitamin deficiencies? So there are lots of kind of aspects here. Overall, I would say a healthy diet with a lot of fiber can help you keep those, the intestinal wall healthy, right? The way we said, those tight junctions. So those can actually help with the proper absorption. But a lot of times, again, there might be other factors that can influence the absorption. And again, on a more individual basis, one-on-one, I would be able to determine better an answer to your question. And then the last question is, how can picky eaters incorporate more things to help the gut? And that's a good question, because a lot of picky eaters, you know, they might not eat actually the fruits and vegetables and whole grains, all those high fiber foods. I would say definitely in this case, trying to get more fermented foods into your diet, or even trying to make those foods that are not accepted or accepted easily by picky eaters, kind of hide them. Like, for example, mixed rice cauliflower in a pasta dish or in a rice dish, right? Because again, it kind of blends in, and you know, you get then some fiber and through that vegetable. You know, adding certain things to you know, like for example, picky eaters may like carbohydrates or muffins, and then you could make things with maybe whole grain flour or almond flour, add some flaxseed, maybe add some vegetable there, like a shredded zucchini, you know, just kind of hide basically if the fruits and vegetables and legumes and nuts and seeds are not accepted by a picky eater in their regular form, try to kind of hide them. For example, in the oatmeal, adding some almond meal, you know, there are ground almonds that are kind of mixing, or applesauce, or even like a grated apple. When you cook it, you just can't see it necessarily, but it adds the apple and the nuts in the oatmeal. So those are just some ideas. And then getting some fermented foods that are acceptable by the picky eater would be, I think, some ways to increase or to help the gut.
Elena, I sent a chat to you. It contains the question. We skipped the question and the participant elaborate on it. So I shared that with you. Do probiotics strengthen colon lining, counter worn areas or of intestine lining?
Okay. So to strengthen the colon lining. And you know, again, thinking that those short chain fatty acids can help with that intestinal wall. And actually, as I mentioned, one of the, you know, one of the roles of those short chain fatty acids will strengthen the wall. I mean, it makes sense to say that that can have that effect on your body.
Sorry, and this question is related to the colonoscopy question we skipped earlier. Just wanted to.
Yeah, so let me go back to that question. Do we still have it? No, we don't have it. But I think the question was if the probiotics can help improve colonoscopy outcomes, and the outcomes would be basically to strengthen the colon lining. And again, it seems like, based on what we know about the role of probiotics, is that through the increased production of these short chain fatty acids, this is one of their roles to strengthen the intestinal wall of our gut. So, yeah.
Wow, thank you for that. That was really efficient Q&A marathon. Is my contact information if you have any questions about health education, health screenings. If you also want to contact us regarding nutrition counseling appointments or behavioral health appointments, we also have the phone number and email on the screen here. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.